So speaking of Goldman, like if we could do a beat on Goldman, because it is the Yankees of investment banking, Wall Street. It's all of those things. If George Steinbrenner is not for the faint of heart, nor is Goldman Sachs at that point, which you alluded to, this idea of like you're struggling for a seat at the table. Take us back to Goldman in the 90s. What was it like back then trying to sort of find your way? It's private. It's still private at that point, right?
Yes,
in the 90s.
Yeah, it went public in 99. Look, it was interesting. I joined Goldman Sachs out of Oxford, and then I did a stint for a year at a think tank in Tokyo. So when I joined, I wasn't one of these Wharton kids, who knew that I wanted to go to Wall Street from day one, and I joined and I did a year in New York and then shipped out to Asia. And that's probably the best thing that happened to me, because I was able to find my setting working with these just iconic families and entrepreneurs in Asia that were building their countries. And that, as a 26, 27-year-old kid, you're not going to get away from the analytics. You're not going to get away from actually doing the work, which was very important. But to also add that exposure was huge. And it really opened my eyes to Goldman Sachs. It really was a privilege to work there. And we went from, when I joined, a very client relationship-based culture to a counterparty culture. And the firm always has to reinvent itself every year and multi-years in terms of the way Wall Street's evolving. I was watching an interview with Tom Brady and Belichick, and these guys, that mentality is, Brady never looked at having won 6 Super Bowls when he went for the 7th, right? He was like, well, that's in the past. I'm only focused on, and that's the way Goldman was. It's that same mentality. I mean, today, the virtue is scale. Back then the virtue wasn't scale. In fact, if anything, the virtue was a little bit less is more. And that's the world's changed. And so that, and you can't just not evolve, but that makes it more challenging.
Yeah, I love that philosophy, not wide and shallow, but narrow and deep. And sometimes you mentioned 99, you go public, all of a sudden the scoreboard changes and you got to just throw more shots, not quality shots, right, but just more shots. And obviously that's what I love what you do at Redbird.